Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Jay Helms. I'm the founder of this movement and podcast known as the W2 Capitalist. Today, I have an extremely special guest, Gabriel Hamel. Am I saying that right, Gabriel?
That's right. Yep.
I always want to make sure I'm getting guest names correctly. I probably should ask you that off air so I didn't sound like such a jackass right now. But anyway,
Oh, you got
um,
it. You got it.
Gabriel is a real estate investor who's passionate for real estate, business, and financial freedom. He has helped to amass a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Consisting of single-family, multifamily apartments, commercial real estate, and mobile home parks. Time freedom. You're a strong advocate for financial literacy through self-education. I want to make sure we dive into that, but I want to finish reading your bio here. Is time freedom, family, health, wealth, and happiness are most important to you. You focus on time and energy, learning, living, and growing in these areas. Gabriel has a beautiful wife and two amazing sons with lots of energy who keep them busy at various activities. Gabriel strongly believes that being healthy, wealthy, and happy are choices, and within that right, knowledge, and more importantly, effective action can be greatly achieved. So, speaking of, and I'm going to use your words, beautiful wife, you guys have this picture on social media where you're like laying on your back and she's up in the air on the beach or something like that. How long
Yeah.
did y'all have to practice before you were able to nail that?
You know what? We actually didn't practice it. So we did after the wedding. My wife wanted to do a trash the dress type thing where
Oh,
we
wow.
went.
Okay.
Yeah, we went down to the ocean and kind of played in the water. And the photographer took some pictures. And he just said, "Hey, I had this couple that did this. Do you guys think you can do it?" And we said, "Of course we can do it. Let's do it." And we tried it, and he snapped some good pictures. And so
That is amazing.
that's
Yeah.
how that came
Well,
to be.
y'all look like you're professional dancers, or I mean, it looks awesome. That's what I'm
Oh,
trying to get out. So that's
appreciate
awesome.
it. Appreciate it.
Um, it says a lot about you and your wife to be able to want to do that on your wedding day too. So
Yeah.
that's cool. That's really cool.
Thank
So
you.
we were chatting just a little bit before I hit the record button about how long you've been investing in real estate. And when you came home or when you were in the military, you exited the military, you went to a W-2 world, or we started getting in a little bit. And I was like, hang on, let's make sure we capture all this. So walk me through your W-2 experience leading up to your real estate investing, which you've been doing now for 15 years. Did I see that right?
It's about that. I bought my first house in 2005.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, really my first experience with work, if we went way back, was I had a paper route from 12 to 16 because my parents, we grew up lower middle class and they had, they were working parents and there were often things that I wanted and they said, "Hey, we just can't afford it." And so I worked every morning delivering papers from 12 to 16. I joined the Army National Guard at 17, my senior year of high school, and I was doing just like the commercials, 1 week in a month,
Yeah.
2 weeks a year. I always knew, of course, that there was a possibility of being deployed, but the Oregon National Guard, I was in an infantry unit. They hadn't been deployed since World War II. And
Nice.
so, yeah, 2002, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and just had a huge impact on my life. I knew that college, the academia route, even a high paying job was really not my route. And so after I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, probably around 2002, and shortly after that, in 2003, I got deployed to Kuwait and Iraq for a year. And so oftentimes just thought about the lessons in that book and thought, hey, when I come back, I'm going to start investing in real estate. And that was my plan. A lot of my friends and fellow soldiers kind of laughed at the idea that you could become financially free through real estate, especially without a college degree or any kind of background or any money to start. And when I came back, bought my first house in 2005, bought my second house in 2006, and I opened up a small nutrition store, which eventually I had to shut down. And so when I shut the store down, I worked a bunch of odd and end jobs just out of necessity and eventually landed a minimum wage job in a high school in the special education class. And I quickly realized, even though my heart went out to those kids, that was not my passion. And I really, really got serious about having to replace that income and wanting to replace that income as quickly as possible with a more passive flow. And in this case, it was with some seller financing real estate.
Yeah. So And I want to dive into that because seller finance real estate is like the unicorn for me. So
Sure.
I want to know your secrets because I struggle with that tremendously. But back up real quick. Thank you for your service. You signed up to do a job that I was not willing to do. So thank you for that. Uh, the other thing I wanted to make sure is you talked about being around people and telling them that, hey, I want to be financially free, I want to invest in real estate, and very much like ver several versions of my circle ago, people were laughing, saying, "No, that's crazy, man. Don't do it. You're gonna lose your butt." You know, all this stuff. Um, I wonder how many of those people you hang around today, or if they see you in a different light, right? So you're like, "I told you so," or kind of help them, maybe educate them a little bit. And then the other thing is, you mentioned you bought your first house in 2005, your second house in 2006, which we all now out excuse me, all now know that was at near the height of the market, right? For that cycle.
Yep.
I did the
Yep.
same thing, man. I call it my false start. I bought
Yeah.
one single family house in 2006. I wanted to end up renovating, flipping it like I live and flip, but
Yep.
ended up holding on to it for about 6 years as a rental after that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I still
uh,
have my first couple houses. And
oh
so
yeah,
I know I gave you kind of a mouthful there at the beginning. And so we can unpack that a little bit. Yeah. When I got deployed, a lot of the people that I was on the deployment with, I'm still in touch with. And it's neat because a lot of them had been around from the beginning, and some of them are investing in real estate and have reached out and are currently investing in real estate themselves. And so
yeah,
that's been neat to see. I'm definitely not much of a "hey, I told you so" guy, but it is enjoyable to see people start to take that leap. And
yeah.
so yeah, in 2005, yeah, it was at the height of the market. But so I went to the bank and they gave me a no money down loan. So this is subprime. I had
Sure.
no job, no income, but they gave me a loan. And so I did the same thing in 2006, and I thought to myself, "Hey, this is easy. I can just go to the bank
Yeah.
once a year. They're going to give me a no money down loan, and I can just do this once a year. And in a few years, I'll have a decent portfolio." And by 2008, I had 3 homes, 2 with no money down, 1 with 5% down. And when
Mm.
I went back to the bank in 2008, they said, "Hey, wait a minute, you actually need a down payment. You need some income." Uh, in fact, they wanted me to have 30% down, and I was so spoiled with that no money down and 5% down. I thought, I don't have 30% down, and I would have to work a lot of jobs and a lot of hours to build up enough down payments to do this every single year. And so I just knew there had to be a better way. And so I had remembered briefly reading something about seller financing. So I got online and just started searching and researching about seller financing. And I found there's just so much creativity and so much flexibility in the terms. And so that's really what my focus was. And that's how I, bought my fourth property. And it's how I bought my most recent property just recently. So
Awesome. So those same tactics that worked a decade ago are still working today, essentially.
absolutely. And most of the people that say you can't do seller financing anymore, they just don't believe they can, or they haven't done it, or they haven't tried. But there's a reason you can still do it. It's because sellers who understand the advantage of selling in that way want to continue to sell that way.
Yeah. I think my problem is I'm not dedicated to it enough. I'm not, I'm probably just as lazy as everybody else when it comes to, all right, I want to find the easy stuff, especially with having a W-2 and having 3 kids now. I mean, time is of the essence. I don't have a whole lot of time to track these things down, but that's my scapegoat anyway. But give me some tactics that you use that open the doors for seller financing, because a lot of the sellers that I talk to, um, although it's very minimum, I'm sure, and maybe that's my problem, maybe I'm not doing enough volume, but they're just not interested, right? Maybe
Yep.
I haven't unveiled it, their pain point big enough, maybe I haven't said the right things. I was talking to Jake and Gino, if you're familiar with those guys, this morning, and they were laughing at me talking about how I walked in and just kind of vomited on the crowd when I needed to come in and say, hey, here, give them bits and pieces before you just come in and just and I have been told that I'm pretty direct. So I wonder if it's my delivery or if I'm just not doing enough volume. What are
Yeah.
your give me some insight. The guy who's wanting to, for whatever reason, I just want to be able to check off, hey, I've done a seller financing deal. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think the biggest thing, and it took me a few deals to realize this, and the question that I get asked more than almost anything else is, how do I convince or talk a seller into carrying financing?
Mm,
And what I've realized over the years, especially after those first couple deals, reflecting back, is I have never ever had to convince a seller to carry financing.
mm,
And the sellers that have been willing to carry financing are sellers that already want to. They already understand the advantage of them being the bank. And so early on, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, the seller financing is amazing. It's a true win-win. It's great for the seller. It's great for me as the buyer. I need to go educate the world and all these sellers on why they should carry financing. And then I reflected and realized, everyone who's carried financing, I've never had to talk them into it. They already wanted to do it. So what if I just
mm.
position myself and put myself in front of enough sellers that want to carry financing? And so rather than try to educate or re-educate a large group of people, I focused my time on building relationships and meeting sellers that were in a position and already wanted to carry the financing. And that way the conversation was a lot more almost all around structure of the deal itself, rather than trying to educate them on what seller financing was. So I'd say that's the biggest piece, is just get in front of enough sellers that already understand.
That's an amazing tip. Yeah, it's so you're not actually trying to sell them on the idea. You're just trying to find the ones that already know about the idea and want to move forward, right? So
Correct. Yep.
once you find that person, because obviously they want to be comfortable with you, right?
Yep.
Because essentially they're becoming the bank during this situation. How do you build that trust relationship? Is it just time? Is it experience? And for people who don't have either one, how do you get over that hurdle, right?
Yeah, now it's a little of both. It's the experience, and obviously starting out, if you don't have experience yet, it's that catch 22.
Right.
And for me, I was scouring Craigslist, just typing in keywords like seller financing, owner terms, and I just started having conversation with people. And what I found is a lot of these sellers, these weren't sellers that wanted to hire an agent. So these were a lot of for sale by owner properties. And so calling them up and then getting FaceTime with them, sitting down with them, meeting them, and really just having that FaceTime. And it became a lot more human to human, person to person, rather than write an offer on a piece of paper that my agent presents to their agent and their agent presents to them, which feels very transactional.
Yes.
Being able to sit down with them, for lunch or at their house was a lot more human. And I think naturally that created and really creates this environment of trust. And then as you go, you build up a good track record. And a lot of these sellers have multiple properties they want to sell you. And then of course you can kind of leverage these past transactions and future deals to say, hey, look, I've purchased properties in this way before. I have a good track record. Here's some references. And that's been a way to kind of build it past the beginning as well.
Yeah, that is the catch 22, right? So that's interesting. Hey, real quick, I kind of skipped over this part, but you live in Eugene, Oregon.
Correct.
Do you invest just in Oregon as well, or are you other places?
Yeah, all my properties other than one are in Oregon. So most of
Okay.
my properties are within, I'd say, 15 minutes from me. But then I
Okay.
have several properties about 30 minutes and an hour south as well. And then I have
Okay.
one property in Pennsylvania, and that is kind of a long story. We don't have.
The
We
look on
don't.
your face when you said that, there's got to be a story behind it. So let's
It's
dive into that, man. So why Pennsylvania?
it's not that great of a story, and I get asked that all the time. I always get asked, hey, do you only invest in Oregon, or all your properties
Yeah.
in Oregon? It's like, yeah, all but one.
Yeah.
It was just a timing thing. I do know almost no turnkey. It's the only turnkey type property I did.
Yeah.
I had met a guy at a conference, and he had a house, and it was a cash flowing market. I had
Yeah.
the money at the time. It just made sense at the time, and I'll probably never do that type of deal again. I'm not opposed to investing out of state. I think it's about building a strong team there.
Yeah.
And where I live locally, I really know the market, and more importantly, the sub-market. And so I'm really comfortable here with the market itself, but also just naturally building relationships and a network where I live. And that's where my focus is currently.
Yeah. And you don't self-manage now, right? You've got a team that manages those for you.
Yeah, I have a third party property management, correct?
Yeah. No, I'm with you on the long distance stuff. You've got to be able to establish yourself. And um, what we've been doing here recently is leaning on some relationships we have of people who are in those areas and know that market and been studying it. But I'm with you. If I'm buying something just me, it's going to be right here. And
Yeah.
and for no other reason. I mean, I sold we had a duplex that we owned for 3 years, never stepped foot into it. We sold it this year, never stepped foot into it ever. Even when we were buying it, had my home inspector go over. I didn't go into the property. It was just one of those quirky things, and I never drove. I mean, I rarely drove by it. I don't know. It was one of those things where it was, if I had the luxury to do it, if I wanted to, I mean, literally it was 5 minutes from my house, but I just never did, so that kind of warmed me up to think, okay, I can do this long distance as long as I have those team members in place, which is
Yeah.
crucial.
And there's no, one right way. I've met people that have been really successful
Yep.
investing in their backyard, and I've met people that only invest out of state and they've done really well. And so it's finding what works well for you. And for me in this case, it's really just building a network around my local market. And I feel very, very comfortable there, and also the ability to grow within my market as well.
Very cool. What's your portfolio look like today? I know you kind of do a little bit of everything, but what is the makeup of it today?
Yeah, right now I currently hold a little over 170 units, and it's a mix of, I have 2 mobile home parks. Those are my most recent purchases. And then it's kind of a mix of single family. I started with smaller multifamily, 2s and 3s and 4s and 6s. I have some apartment complex and some mixed use commercial, where it's ground floor commercial and apartments up top. And so right now my focus is value add multifamily, and more specifically mobile home parks. I think there's an opportunity there. I really enjoy looking at and analyzing those deals.
What is it that so 2 things. Are these all properties that you own personally? Do you have partners invested in the deal as well? And so second follow-up is, what is attractive for you for mobile home parks?
Sure. I don't have partners on the mobile home parks. I do have some partners on a couple of the smaller, medium-sized apartments.
Yeah.
And with the attraction of the mobile home parks, I've always been a value investor as far as looking for properties that are poorly managed, under rented, and have deferred maintenance. And those are kind of my three things. I want that upside potential. I always structure the financing to make the property cash flow the way it currently sits. So I'm never relying on appreciation, or never relying on increased cash flow. That's just kind of a bonus. But with mobile home parks, it fits that criteria. There's a lot of parks that are poorly managed, under rented, and deferred maintenance. And so that value add opportunity, for instance, on the first mobile home park I purchased, rents had not been increased in 4.5 years. And even with a small increase, it's still below market. Utilities had not been billed back, which spread out over 40 some units is not a lot for the tenants, but it's a lot for me. And so billing that back, improving the park, it creates a situation where you're adding value to the tenants, and you're also adding monetary value to the park itself for future growth.
Yeah. So one of the things that you it was in your bio, right, is that let me bring it back. Being healthy, wealthy, and happy are choices.
Yep.
Have you ever met somebody that didn't want to be happy by choice? Just explain that to me.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
That was a bad way to ask that question, but
no, I thought you were going to ask something different.
Okay.
I thought you were going to ask if I've met anyone that hasn't agreed, and I have.
Yeah.
I think it comes to, it's a mindset thing. I think that it is a choice to choose how we live our life. And yes, there are outside circumstances, and we are all born into something that we don't have control over. But I do believe that we are and have the ability to decide how our present state is and what our life is like going into the future. And so I think happiness, yes, is a choice. I think being healthy is a choice. Taking actions every day to be healthy and improve health, and same with being wealthy. There's a lot of people that will say, so and so is lucky, but they go and watch what they've done in their life, and they aren't wealthy because of luck. It's typically because they put in the work. And that's the same thing with being healthy. It's the same thing with being happy. They've spent a lot of time learning and studying and being in those states. And so, I absolutely think those are choices. And I have had people argue with me, especially on the happy part,
Yeah.
which I always find interesting, but I do think it's a choice.
Yeah, I would imagine those people have not consumed Jocko Willing's Extreme Ownership book, or maybe they disagree with it all wholeheartedly, because you shaking your head like you've consumed that one, you've read that one.
I have, yes.
So that was a big slap in the face for me, and it was one of those things, and it is one of those things where I look at somebody and I can say, okay, that guy has victim mentality, right? And we all have those people around us, but it's easier to point out them. But if you look in the mirror, you're like, maybe, just maybe, I'm a little bit of that too. But that book really opened my eyes to think. I think it's him, Jocko, that says everything that happens to you is because of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, that again, mindset, it just clicked for me. I'm like, okay, if I'm going to take credit for everything, I've got to take responsibility for the bad stuff too, right?
Yeah, and it's it's up to us to choose how we react to a situation.
Yes.
We can't control how others act, but we can definitely control how we react to a situation. Someone hits your car, you can get all pissed off, or they cut you off in traffic, you can get all pissed off. They've already done it. It's already happened. So it's not saying it's always easy, but it's still our responsibility to choose how we react to the situation.
Yeah. And funny you mentioned that. I went to Lowe's earlier, and for whatever reason, these two people were just walking down the middle of the aisle. I'm trying to find a parking spot, and I was being a smart ass, and I just stopped, and I'm like, you guys could have moved over. But you're right. It was just one of those things where it already happened. Just let it go. They weren't being considerate, but I was also being rude.
Sure.
So and one of those things too, is I used to beat myself up over that stuff pretty bad, because I wanted to be perfect, right? I had this perfectionism syndrome in me, and I finally learned that progress is greater than perfection, right? As long as you're making yourself a better version of yourself than you were yesterday, you did a good thing. So
I couldn't agree more. And I think we both have kids. And so that's an often reminder that we're not anywhere near perfect.
Yeah. No, it is. And you said you got two boys. So when you get that little girl, then you'll really start to pay attention.
We're all done. We're done at two. We're done at two.
That's
I've made that official.
Okay. But you're right. They're always watching, man. It's always amazing how they'll pick things up when you think they're not paying attention. You think they're consumed by whatever iPad or cartoon that's on, and then you hear them repeating what you just said. They're like, yeah, that's not good. They're awesome. So financial literacy, it's a big thing that you want to talk about. Let's dive into that a little bit, because I agree with you. I think financial literacy is a big problem in the U.S. And part of that is leading, not just that piece, but part of that is leading us to we're more likely going to homeschool our kids, at least for the first several years. But talk to me about why you think that's such a big problem, and how do we as parents battle that, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem is it's just finance and financial literacy. It's not taught in schools at all. And so for me, I think the reason that Rich Dad Poor Dad just resonated with me so much is it's something, the content in there was something that I desired and didn't even realize I was seeking after. It was something, school was just not my environment. And for some people it is, they learn well in that environment. And for me, I felt like there was something more, something that it just wasn't giving me. I didn't have this natural attraction to being in school and going and getting a job and working for the rest of my life. I was in school for the wrestling and for the social aspect of it.
Yeah.
And, and that's why I was there. And so when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, it really did change my life to go, wow, there's something else. This makes sense to take finances into my own hands, to not rely on a job, to not rely on some other company to take care of me. So it was very empowering to know, hey, there is another way. And it's a way that creates more freedom in your life. You're not a slave to a job. You're not a
Yeah.
slave to somebody else. And so I don't expect the school system to change anytime soon or to teach that. I think that a lot of that's going to come from people like you doing these podcasts and the books and people out there on social media uh, showing and that there's another way. And so I think a lot of that learning is going to come from home. I don't expect the school system to teach my kids about financial freedom. I don't expect them
Yeah.
to teach them about the happiness. There's some things that they can learn in school that are amazing. And I think a lot of it's going to be at home and in the environment that we as parents put them in.
You're, how old are your kids?
They're 9 and 11.
Okay. So you already teaching them financial literacy. What are you using to teach them?
Yeah, we have a open dialogue. They know the difference between an asset and a liability.
Nice. At
We
9 and 11. Awesome.
absolutely. Yeah, we go driving for dollars and we point out properties. We talk about, what's not just assets and liabilities, but what appreciation means, how to structure a real estate deal. We played
awesome.
Monopoly over the weekend with some guys that I'm in a mastermind with, and my son partnered up with another guy, which I've never seen on Monopoly. They partnered up before we got around the board and, bought a hotel before the rest of us could get around the board.
No,
And
wait a minute. They partnered up. That I don't know if that's in the rules though, right?
I've never seen it. The rest of us, weren't in a good spot like 5 minutes in. One of them had 2 properties. One had one. They decided instead of selling them to each other, they would go in on a partnership. The other one would buy a hotel and they would split the profits.
That kid's going somewhere. I mean, think about it. It's not in the rules, but it's not in the rules, right?
There we go. That's right.
It can go either way. That's incredible.
Yep.
You mentioned Mastermind. Tell me a little bit about that, because I host a mastermind, the W2 Capitalist Mastermind. It's a virtual. I mean, I have weekly meetings just like this. But tell me what you're involved in.
I joined a mastermind about a year ago called GoBundance.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you're familiar with it, the hosts of Bigger Pockets, Brandon and David Green, they're part of the GoBundance tribe. And what attracted me to it is they had talked about it. When I looked it up, their tagline was a tribe of healthy, wealthy, generous men choosing to live epic lives. And I thought, yes, this is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Because some of these mastermind, they're very surface, or it's only financial driven. And this was a group of men that, they wanted to improve in all different areas of their life. And so this last year has been an amazing year, meeting so many amazing people. And, every event, it's a room of extremely successful people without the ego. It's everybody is there, willing to be vulnerable, willing to grow, willing to learn. And they're all looking to improve and share their knowledge. And so it's been a really neat year to be a part of something like that.
That is extremely cool. Yeah, I'm familiar with them. I'm trying to think of, this is going to sound bad. I don't know if they'll ever listen to it, but one of the guys who helped found the GoBundance movement, he wrote a book.
Probably Pat Hyben, or
that's it. Pat Hyben.
Okay. Yeah.
He's on my list of folks I want to have on the podcast. So probably should remember his name if that's the case. But,
and David Osborne. It was David Osborne and Pat Hyben were the 2 guys that started GoBundance.
I didn't realize David Osborne was part of that.
He is.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, look, so what are your plans? We're recording this a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving. 2019 is essentially a close for us. I kind of take the rest of the year and I focus on, okay, because we're going to do not vacation, but go see family. We don't live close to our relatives or anything like that. So we'll take some time to travel and kind of decompress, and gives me a lot of time to focus on what we want to do for 2020. 2019, we did the same thing, although I went into 2019 thinking we're just going to focus on the W2 Capitalist brand. We're not going to buy anything. We're not going to sell anything. And here we sold off half of our portfolio and started investing into 330 units or something like that. So, needless to say, we didn't stick to our plan, but it's still a good exercise for us to go through. What do you do anything like that? And what are your plans? Are you already thinking about 2020 and what you guys are wanting to accomplish?
Yeah, I definitely set different goals and such, and I plan on, buying more property this year before the end of 2019, if the opportunity is there. And so,
Yeah.
it used to be that I used to make offers. I used to make offers on Thanksgiving strategically and on Christmas Day strategically. I'm a little pickier, and what I'm buying these days are a little bit different than what I was buying then.
Yeah.
Back then, it was single family uh, fixers, and I'd make offers on those days, and did well there. So yeah, I'm going to continue to buy. I think it's always a good time to buy if you buy right. And
Yeah.
so I am just continually working to expand my network and meet people. I think that relationships is really undervalued, and there's a lot of value in just knowing people and letting people know what you're looking for and building those relationships. Some of those might just become friendships. Some of those might be business opportunities in the future. But I think that relationships are so important.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. If I look back at every deal that I've closed, it's because of a relationship. It was a
Yep.
relationship with a broker. It was a relationship with a partner, with a banker, realtor. It's all about that. I think you're right. I think there there is some power. The power of relationships is truly undervalued. And I try to, as part of my weekly to-do list, is to help build those relationships. So that's awesome to hear you say that. Where do you think there's a lot of, we've been on a good run, as you could say, with the
Yeah.
market. There's a lot of skepticism out there about where it's headed, what's gonna happen. My crystal ball is telling me one thing. What do you think we're going, especially with it next year being an election year? Maybe that doesn't even come into play for you. But where
Yeah.
do you think we're headed, or where do you think the Oregon market's headed? Since you know that
Sure.
one's
Sure. I don't care if the market goes up or down or sideways or in any direction. So I've always stuck to the principle of cash flow first. And so even in 2005, 6, 7, when that was a peak market, I
yeah,
bought homes below value. I made sure they cash flowed. I never relied on appreciation. I look at appreciation second. And yes, appreciation can definitely build wealth, but I've never relied on that. So it's cash flow first. So when I buy a property, whether it was my first one or my most recent one and everything in between, it's cash flow first. And that keeps things pretty darn recession proof. I don't care if
yeah,
my properties go up and down in value on paper, as long as they cover the mortgage and I'm cash flow positive.
yeah. And I'm with you there too. Here is the super conservative side of me, because I don't want to have any vacancies in these
Mhm.
properties. So, I'm correlating, and probably not correctly, but I correlate a downturn in the market also means a downturn in the economy. Some people might lose their jobs. And I don't think it's going to be as bad as it was in '07, '08, and those couple of years. Do you correlate those two, or do you buy in an asset class that you feel like you're more um, recession proof than anything? Does that make sense?
With the mobile home parks, I feel like they're very recession proof. You're not going to find, many places that you can rent something less than a mobile home pad.
Right.
And so for that reason, mobile home parks are quite recession proof. But even in 2008, 9, 10, 11, even after the downturn and the subprime and people were losing jobs and their houses were going back to the bank, I never had more vacancy because of it. In fact, a lot of the buyer pool shrunk, and
Mm,
so those buyers were actually becoming renters. And
tenants.
so
Yeah.
tenants. I never saw increased vacancy or even decreased rent because of the economy. I did watch people walk away from their homes who didn't need to, because on paper it showed that the property was worth less, but they
Yeah.
truly didn't
Yeah.
need to. And so, I held tight, continued to buy, and those properties continued to cash flow.
Yeah. 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 And that, I'm kind of sitting back. I'm with you. I don't focus on appreciation. It's nice at the end of the day, but it's cash flow is the most important for us too. I'm sitting back though. I have trouble finding deals that cash flow because of
Sure.
how expensive everything is. I've owned a couple mobile homes. I actually still have one in my portfolio now. It's just one of those things where I don't know, for whatever reason, I'm just not turned on by it, I guess, is if that makes sense. But
Sure.
and I think I'm getting emotionally tied to the deal, and I'm not looking at the numbers, which is a no-no, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's awesome. That's incredible. Well, look, I know we're pushing up on time. Super positive guy, Gabriel, dude. And I'm gonna say this, and I don't mean it in an odd way. I know you're married. I'm married. You have an
Sure.
amazing smile,
Oh,
dude. I
thank
mean,
you.
that's. I've actually been looking at like Smile Direct or Candid, trying to get them to sponsor the podcast, so
Oh, okay. Good.
and do some swap of services to get this gap in my teeth fixed. But we'll see. My wife's going to kill me when she hears that. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. Maybe it's part of your brand. Just keep it, you know?
is it though? I mean,
I
it's
don't
not
know. I
just.
don't know.
I think Michael Strahan has that covered, and he's good. You know.
Yeah. Well, I
um,
appreciate it, man. I appreciate the kind words.
yeah. It definitely helps. I don't know. I notice things like that because mine bothers me. So it's probably time for me
Sure.
to do something about it. Before I get any more awkward on you, how can people find out more about you, and what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram, and you
Okay,
can find me at Gabriel Hamel or Gabriel R. Hamel. And I also have Facebook, Gabriel Hamel, and also hamelinvestments.com is my website. And there's some information there to get in touch with me.
perfect. I will make sure I link to all of those in the show notes.
Awesome.
Man, I appreciate your time. We'll do
Yeah,
this again soon.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Hey, buddy. See you.
All right. Bye.